So, the PS1. Sony's PlayStation 1 was an early 3D system, which meant that it had weak hardware that developers had to maximize by creating abstract forms that were more meant to be interpreted than actual representations. And so as a result, a unique style had emerged, which was kind of ambiguous and had a dreamlike quality to it that is featured prevalently in today's vaporwave movement and other artistic movements. We're going to be recreating this aesthetic today, and in order to do that, we're going to look at the core aspects of the look. It has jagged edges, small clear textures, a low polygon count, and heavily features a blend of 2D and 3D elements. Now we're going to be creating this look in Blender, a 3D open source modeling software. So let's get into it. Yeah! I broke down the UI into top and side bits. This is the top bit. On the top we have our different sorts of tabs which are able to complete different sorts of functions, and in the layout tab, which we are going to be using today, that's where you edit your mesh, you move it around, rotate it, change it, scale it. Modeling is about changing vertexes, which are kind of like points in a connected dot worksheet. Sculpting is where you do more traditional sculpting sorts of movements, like putting your thumb in and denting something in. And shading is where we put textures and change how light affects our mesh. In the compositing tab, we're able to add filters and manipulate the final render for adding post-processing effects. Alright, so here we're going to be turning on the magnet in increment, and then going up into here and hitting the size and changing it to 1/4. You can just put the math in for that, and then we're going to be going into the scene properties and changing the unit system to none. And then we're going to be deleting this cube and adding a grid, and this grid's going to have 19 by 19 subdivisions, and we're going to be going into the material tab now and adding a displacement map. And the displacement map will have the Voronoi texture image, and then we're going to mess with the settings to make this kind of look like sand. Yeah, like that. Now we're moving on to the compositing tab, hit use nodes, and then scale. We need 2 scales, so 1, 2, and then a pixelate node, and we're going to turn one scale down to 1/4, and then we're going to turn the second scale up to 4 times. Go up at the top and hit edit, and then preferences, and then go to the add-on screen and search up dynamic sky. We want to add this add-on, and then go into the right, hit create, and change the world setting to dynamic 1. That's the sky we just created, and I'm going to match the colors of the sky to the color of a sunset. Okay, so we're going to be creating a material for our mesh, and then delete the principled BDSF, and add the diffuse BDSF, and connect that to our surface. And now we're going to be creating a new node, the color image texture node, the mix node, and the vertex color node. We're going to connect that to the color, and then we're going to hit Control T to add modifiers to our image texture. Now we're going to be looking for a sand texture, and we're going to be adding this to our texture folder inside whatever you want, and put this into the image modifier of your choice and change the texture size to 128 by 128 pixels, and then we're just going to select that texture for our mesh. Here I'm just scaling the texture node to whatever size I think is appropriate. Okay, so now we're going to be making the mesh for our ocean. First we're going to create a grid, we're going to scale it up, and then I'm going to make a water material, rename everything for organization purposes, and now we're going to add an ocean modifier, and I'm just going to start messing with the settings on the ocean modifier. Here I am repeating the same process as the sand material, but with an ocean texture instead. Here's the sculpting interface. I'm hitting Shift S and G interchangeably to flatten out and grab different aspects of the mesh, and now I've just gone back into the ocean modifier to change how the waves look. I've made these diagonal slices with the K tool and then the C tool to select all these faces, and now I'm adding them to a vertex group so they can be easily selected. Here is how I will make the ocean foam by using a reference image and then cutting out the foam and layering it over our sand image and then discoloring the sand image to make it look wet. Now we're going to be applying this texture to our mesh, and I'm going to do it by hitting Shift D and pulling up our selected vertexes up, and then we're going to add the texture on top of that selected layer, and then after that we're going to pull the ends of those layers down to connect to our mesh below, and then we're going to repeat this process again with another layer that we're going to texture with the water texture, and then we're going to turn the alpha channel on for it, so it's going to be slightly more like transparent. So it kind of looks like water, and then we're also going to pull that down with a G and then Z, which moves things along the vertical axis. And then I'm just going to modify some of the vertexes to make sure that things aren't clipping through each other. Alright, so here I'm going to be adding a color ramp to our image texture by through that I'm going to be able to darken the colors of it to match more that of an ocean at sunset. Now I'm going to be hitting the E key to extrude out these faces because they were kind of like ending at the edge of the render, and now I'm going to go through the process of adding foam to our ocean. By hitting tab we can enter edit mode, and then we're going to hit select random. We can turn up the amount of faces that are selected at random, and we're going to be using this to randomly add the foam to our ocean. We're going to be creating a new ocean foam material that we can apply to whatever is selected here. Here's the last recorded moments of the current progress in our project. As I was creating a sun texture, it crashed on me. We're going to be creating a sun texture by simply adding it to a plane and then turning that towards the camera. Here's where our vertex color node comes into handy. We're going to enter vertex color node and then change our paintbrush color and just paint onto the mesh. I'm going to change the settings here so you can see what it looks like. We're going to add some blues, some yellows, and that's going to make it look like the sun's rays are coming down onto the ocean. Here I'm creating an ecosphere that I'm also going to add a displace modifier to, but instead I'm going to use the cloud modifier, and that's going to make it kind of look like a rock. I'm going to create 2 of these and just kind of move it around until it looks like there's a bunch of rocks on the frame I want in this shot. Now I'm going to make a palm tree in the same process we've done before, but I'm going to make a cube and then hit E, Z, and then 1, and it's going to move it up. And then I'm going to rotate it and extrude some of it left, so I'm going to select it and then hit G and then R, and then it's going to rotate it. And I'm going to hit E on the top that I have selected and pull it out, and it's going to extrude these faces downwards to make it kind of look like leaves. And I'm going to select these different faces as the leaf vertex group and then the bark vertex group, and then I'm going to add the materials to them as we have done before. So we're going to add a transparent background to our leaf now, and we're first going to do that by going to the blend mode and turning on alpha clip, and then we're going to add a principled BDSF texture image, and we're going to connect our image to the alpha channel of the principled BDSF. Now, using everything that we have learned up to this point, I'm going to be creating a bush, which is just a rock with a leaf texture, and then I'm going to be copy-pasting palm trees and rocks everywhere to add foliage to our scene, and a color ramp to change the color of the palm trees. The painted on shadows here are just done with the vertex shading with a black paintbrush on a multiply layer. Now I'm going to be creating a temple to add some sort of mystery with like a little black door to represent kind of a gateway, and then there's going to be foliage in the background which suggests a greater outside world. And here it is, the finished piece.